Hey everyone, this is Ben from MotoCampNerd.com, and you're listening to the Finding Camp podcast. More than ever, people are getting on a motorcycle and going camping. On this show, we talk about all things motorcycles, camping, and moto travel. So let's get into it. Okay, so we are officially, fall is right around the corner. Fall is going to be this weekend. At the date of this recording, it is September 20th. September 23rd is technically the autumn equinox, and we're getting into fall. And here in central North Carolina, the temperatures are already dropping, which is fantastic because we've had a wave of 90-degree days, which is just meh. And now we're actually having 60 to 80 degree days instead of 70 to 90 degree days. So it's cooling off in the afternoon, and it's fantastic. That being said, we need to start thinking about gear for fall camping and maybe even going into winter camping. Again, I'm in central North Carolina, and even around here, I think last year we actually did a New Year's ride, and it was 70 degrees out during the day. It did drop down the 50s, I think, at night, which isn't terrible. But still, we have a really good riding season. Our riding season doesn't really end until maybe mid-February, till about the end of March, because we usually have some surprise ice storms or whatever. Now, going up into western North Carolina, it's a completely different story because higher elevations and all that. But what I wanted to talk about is getting the right gear for camping in the cold, because there are people who like to take unnecessary items with them to go camping in the cold. Now, you know that I'm a huge supporter of you do you, and I still encourage that, but to a point. And I'm going to tell people when I think it's a bad idea, because I want to be honest with people, and I'm going to encourage people to do the right thing, even if it's not buying expensive gear, but it's buying the right gear, right? And so we actually did a write-up on this. I've got it on the blog, and I've also, if you saw our catazine from last year, I had an article in there, and it was called How to Stay Warm and KISS While Motorcycle Camping. KISS being keep it simple, stupid, because you really don't have to overcomplicate staying warm while camping in the colder weather. What is that going to entail? Well, this does mean that you're going to have to really make sure you've got good base layers. Merino wool, even synthetic layers. You may have to go with a mid to a heavyweight instead of a lightweight layer just to make sure you're good. Good socks, a neck gaiter or a scarf or something, a buff around your neck, and a beanie, because these are how the sleeping bag ratings are made. It's with all these base layers on. So, good base layers. Let's start there. Now, we did some testing last year in the 30s, and Mary found out that her feet get really cold really easily, and so she was wearing good wool socks, and we had the little I think there were synthetic booties from Enlightened Equipment that she was wearing, and she was still getting cold feet. And I believe that was because of, I'll have to go back and look at my notes, but I'm pretty sure she was in a 15-degree bag, and I was in a 30-degree bag. And we actually had zipped those together. And these were the Nemo discos that we were using, that we had zipped together. And we found out that there was a little bit of an issue when it gets down to that cold, is there's the flap in between. Our standard bag that we use when we go together is the Big Agnes King Solomon. And there's a flap in the middle that holds it together, so that way if you toss or turn, it doesn't lift up and let all the air out. When you zip the two discos together, it does not have that. So a lot of air got sucked out. And so about halfway through our night, we were actually sleeping in the back of the truck. And again, it was 35 out, and we were just trying to test the limits of these bags and the ratings. And I think we screwed up because we zipped them together, all the hot air got out, and we ended up having to unzip them, and then zip them up individually to keep ourselves warm. And again, I was in a 30-degree bag. I started getting cold about 3 or 4 hours in, and her feet were cold, and she could not get her feet warm. So we're going to have to reevaluate, either making sure, again, her feet are warm going into the bag before, and not, unzipping or keeping them both individually zipped together so that way all the warmth stays in there and we're not losing heat, or having to add an additional item, maybe like a hand warmer, one of those chemical reaction ones. I believe it's iron and carbon activated with the air, and you shake it up, and potentially adding one of those as a supplement. Now, I don't like that idea because, you're relying on a supplement to keep you warm. And I'll kind of get into my unpopular opinion about that in a minute. But so good base layers, right? You got to have good base layers to make sure that your bag is effective to what it's advertised as. Now, your sleeping pad. A lot of the manufacturers use the ASTM rating. It was updated in 2020, I believe. And, seasonally, a sleeping pad with an R value of 4 to 4.5, that range, is going to be good. I've noticed for myself, getting down into the 40s with a pad that has an R value of 4, around 4, I'm not cold, but I can feel the coolness on the back of the pad. And so that's telling me that I'm going to want to probably update or get a higher R value pad going into like the 40s to the 30s. And this was using the King Solomon. So it's kind of like the Diamond Park, where you've got the sheet on the back of the pad. I'm sorry, the sheet on the back of the sleeping bag, so you don't have any insulation there. And using something like the X-Ped with the R value of like an 8R, a sleeping pad with an R value of 8, like the X-Ped does, and the down mat, or the Dura is what they call it. That one is definitely warm. Like, you can feel it. And they have the Mega Mat too, which is that weird self-inflating foam filled one, and it's like a R value of 12. And I've had people tell me that thing is super warm, and they've got super hot in it just because it insulates really well. So good base layers, a good sleeping pad that supports your sleeping bag, making sure your sleeping bag is rated. We've talked about this before. If you see a sleeping bag that's advertised as 30, your comfort rating is probably going to be around 40. So if you're going to be in the 30s, you probably want to shoot for maybe a 20 to 15 or lower sleeping bag. Now, everybody's body is a little bit different, temperature regulations and all that. And so they always say women are typically a little bit cooler than men when they're sleeping, or colder than men when they're sleeping. So just kind of play with it, figure it out. Maybe your first trip, when it's really cold out, you take an extra layer with you, like a blanket or a quilt, that you can add on an extra additional layer to the bag you already have, just in case. So that way you can figure out your sweet spot on your temperature and how effective it is, depending on what bag you have. Now, going into that, you can also add a liner to it. So if you've got a 30-degree sleeping bag currently that's worked with you, or that's worked really well for you through the summer, you may want to get a fleece style liner that's got a little bit of more fluff to it, something that's going to trap more of the air. And so that way you're staying warmer, right? You're adding more insulation. The alternative would be, like I said a second ago, would be to add, if you've got maybe a blanket or even a quilt or something, grab one of those, take it with you. And that way you're facilitating an extra layer, so that way you can stay warm. So again, base layers, sleeping pad, sleep system. These are the keys to keep your sleep system warm. Good socks, the booties, around camp booties, they're great. I used some last year that we were testing out from Big Agnes, and I used them on the snowball ride. with the local BMW dealership up into Virginia. I think it got down in the 30s, maybe the low 40s or the high 30s one night. And I used my camp pants, which are essentially just ski pants, and I used the camp booties to walk around. More comfortable than the riding boots, more comfortable than jeans, and I was super warm. I, had my puffy jacket on from Big Agnes as well. I loved it. It's great. So, kind of think about those things around camp. And so when you get up in the morning, you get out of your bag, the first thing I did not sleep with my puffy jacket, because one of the things you want to do is make sure you don't sweat. Because if you get too hot and you start to sweat, that moisture will make you cold. And this kind of ties into when you hear people talk about cotton kills. You can wear jeans and you can wear cotton shirts all you want while you're camping and at night and all that. The problem is when you sweat and it gets wet, because it doesn't wick the moisture away. It's stuck to your skin and then you get cold. So a synthetic or merino wool, something that can actually help regulate, is what you really should be wearing when it's cold out, because that will help prevent you from getting cold, but also keep you warm and wick the moisture away if you do sweat. So don't have too many layers on when you go to bed. And, some people even talk about like going to bed chilled a little bit. I've tried it before. I don't like doing that because then I feel like it takes too long to get warm. I'd rather go to bed warm, crawl into my bag, and if I feel like I'm going to start to sweat a little bit, or if I feel like I'm getting warm, I can vent the bag a little bit or open it up somewhere where I can slowly, cool it down and then zip it back up as I'm getting comfortable and about to go to sleep. Because you're having to, when you initially go into your sleeping bag and get into your bed, you're having to essentially warm up your sleeping bag, which has probably been laying in your tent in the cool air at night. So you're going to warm up all that material. You've got to warm up your pad. You've got to warm up everything to create this little, what we're going to call it a hot pocket, right? You're going to create this little hot pocket to keep you warm and inside of it and keep it insulated. And as long as that warms up, you're going to be, using your body heat, and the energy is coming from your body to warm all this up. So I feel like if you go to bed, in my experience, if you go to bed slightly chilled and then jump into it, you're still exerting your body energy to warm up everything around you. And eventually, it kind of equals out and you get kind of warm and comfortable. But like I said, I'd rather just go to bed if I'm standing by the fire or something and I'm warm. Just go jump into bed while I'm warm and warm up all my gear while I'm in it, and then regulate my temperature as I need if I feel like I'm getting hot. And same thing in the middle of the night. If I wake up and I feel like I'm sweating or something, I'll take off the beanie or I'll shed my neck gaiter, It's going to be that playing around with the environment and the moisture, or I should say the humidity, and how cold it is and where you're at. And you'll the more you do it, the more you'll feel out what works in different situations and how you regulate your body temperature. I know even for me, like I'll take my socks off because I can regulate, kind of like I kick my foot out of the sleeping bag to help cool me down. Just that simple taking the socks off is sometimes enough to help cool me down all the way around. So, like we said, good gear. Make sure you've got the proper base layers, sleep system. Don't go to bed. Well, my recommendation is don't go to bed chilled. You can eat different foods. People talk about, eating like a fatty food right before bed. That helps with your body because it's going to work to burn those calories, and that creates energy because essentially calories equals energy. That calorie is a measurement of energy. So I don't want to get too much into the technicals of all that stuff right now. I'm trying to keep it simple and under our 20 minutes, right? So the one thing that I really want to nitpick and tell people not to do is do not use your burner or your stove inside of your tent. Using it inside the vestibule area is okay. I still don't like it because you're putting a flame close to your tent. And if for some reason, if you're boiling water, if you're boiling water or you're cooking something, now all of that steam is getting inside of your tent. Humidity, moisture, wet, cold, all that kind of works together in making you cold, right? So if you introduce too much humidity into the air, it'll make it feel more cold. But people do it right. They climb out of bed. You're kind of snuggled up in your sleeping bag, and you kind of open up your tent, and you get outside your vestibule area, and you make a little cup of hot chocolate or some coffee real quick just to warm you up. I get it. It's fine. Be very careful when you're doing this, because tents, they're all synthetic. They'll go up quick. They'll melt. It's just a bad recipe. So be very careful. But don't bring it inside of the tent, for the love of God. Do not bring it inside of the tent and use it as a heater. It's introducing a lot of humidity, moisture. We're creating humidity. It's an open flame. It's just a bad idea all the way around. Just don't do it. You don't need it. And same thing goes for the buddy heaters. You do not need a propane heater bringing it into your tent to keep you warm at night. It's a bad idea. You're having to now fight with, okay, yes, they've got the little safety things on there, but are you really going to trust the manufacturers 100% on all of the safety equipment that goes into a buddy heater, right? So you've got the tip over sensor, or the tip over, it's like a little ball, right? So it's a valve. So if it tips over, it'll cut the gas off. So, okay, if it does fall over, it maybe not catch your tent on fire or burn anything, no big deal. But then it also has a low oxygen sensor. So if it gets low oxygen, it should automatically cut off. It should. Right there. There's too many fail safes that you have to worry about, and you're getting into like the fiddly things, and you're relying on other things and other processes and things that people have made to work in your favor. And I'm just not a fan of it. I think it's a terrible idea. Again, because you're using propane inside of a confined small space, which can take out the oxygen. So low oxygen, plus that or carbon monoxide will kill you. And I know I've seen people take in like little carbon monoxide detectors and all that with them. So again, now you've got a buddy heater, a propane, like a 1 pound propane bottle, a carbon monoxide detector. You're getting into taking a bunch of crap and junk that you don't need to stay warm, only because you've got a really cheap or a improperly rated sleeping bag and not wearing the proper layers. And so I feel like it's creating one expense for the other, right? Like I always tell people there's a universal price on things, and it's either going to be time or money, or convenience, right? You can sacrifice convenience for that. I guess that kind of goes into the time aspect of things. But saving money and not spending the extra money on maybe a higher rated bag. It doesn't have to be an expensive bag. It could be a bigger, huge, not so easy to pack sleeping bag that just packs really large, but it has a lower temperature rating, like a 0 to 20 degree bag. And then buying some of the cheaper synthetic base layers. You can buy all that and stay warm without having to buy a buddy heater and then take a heater, a propane tank, and all the extra crap with you just to stay warm. It's just my unpopular opinion. We'll call it that. It's my unpopular opinion because I think it's a bad idea. It's not safe. I work in industrial manufacturing. I've been doing that for 10 years now. And it's just one of those things that I've picked up over the years. It's like, you don't do that. You don't introduce something that could be more problematic when there's a right way to make the solution with the right gear, or, in this case, the right gear. So let's not take heaters into the tents with us. Let's not even cross that bridge. Let's find some more realistic solutions. And again, even if you do, like, you're bringing all this extra stuff with it, one thing I didn't even cover was the fact that what happens if it fails? So now you've got improperly rated gear that you're compensating, you're putting a Band-Aid on with a heater, But what happens if you run out of gas, or it doesn't light, or it goes out and it won't relight, or you have some kind of malfunction in the middle of the night? And so now you're stuck with improper gear and no heat. And now you're just making the situation worse for yourself. Now, if you're car camping, it's not a big deal. You jump in your car, you turn it on, you got heat. If you're motorcycle camping, this is a big deal because now you're getting into a spot where you're not able to warm yourself up. And if you don't have the right gear, now you can layer up more gear, I guess, and put on your riding gear and all that and just drive and get the hell out of wherever you're at. That's always an option. But it's a bad situation that you're getting into. And I would recommend, if you are in that situation, hopefully you've listened to me before and you've brought at least a water bottle, one with you, and you have a stove or some way to heat it and heat up that water bottle. Even if you do have a water bottle, you can heat it up. You can put the water bottle on fire and it won't melt the plastic. It'll heat up the water inside, and at least do that. So that way you can shove it into the bag with you or into your jacket or something to help keep you warm in an emergency situation. So I'm done ranting. I'm done with my unpopular opinion. Get your right gear. If you need help, ask. Don't be ashamed to talk to people about what you need to get or get opinions from other people. Just get the right gear the first time. Don't carry all the extra unnecessary stuff you don't need to have. Don't make it overly complicated. Keep it simple. Like I said, KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid. And make sure you do it right the first time. I don't know what other way to put it other than that. And be safe. And I guess the biggest part of me wanting to do this is talk about being safe, because those are just bad ideas and you shouldn't do them. And I want people to be safe while camping and it to still be an enjoyable experience. And you can have a warm, cold camping, or I should say a warm winter camping or fall camping enjoyable experience. Even though it's cold outside, you can stay warm with the right gear. On that note, thank you all for listening. I appreciate all the feedback I've received. And yeah, enjoy fall and go find your camp.